So, if you've ever set a health goal, the focus is almost always on the scale. But today, we're doing a deep dive into the kind of weight that actually matters, the dangerous weight.
Okay.
We're not talking about vanity here. We are talking about that internal toxic fat that signals a serious metabolic clock is ticking. We're really going to cut through decades of noise around just, counting calories to understand the specific physiology that makes fasting, well, fundamentally different.
That distinction is everything. For a lot of people, this metabolic damage, it starts so insidiously, often in their late 20s or 30s. And what's really fascinating is that the source material points to this clear, visible clue. It's the protruding belly. This is usually the first signal of what's called hyperinsulinemia, where your body has just become numb to the constant stream of insulin.
I mean, hyperinsulinemia, at its core, that just means insulin? The ultimate storage hormone is what, just running wild?
Precisely. Insulin's job is to put energy away. Think of it like a constant signal to your body. Store, store, store.
Right.
So if you see someone with that phenotype, looking relatively normal from the shoulders down, but they're carrying significant fat right in the abdomen, they are primed to gain weight easily. Their system is just stuck in storage mode. They can try to restrict calories all they want, but if that insulin level stays high, they're basically swimming against a really strong metabolic current.
So our mission today is clear. We're going to unpack the source material that proves fasting activates a physiological pathway that calorie restriction just can't touch. We want to understand those advanced cellular benefits that go way beyond just seeing a lower number on the scale. Okay, let's start with the villain itself, that protruding belly. Why is that fat, the visceral fat, so much more dangerous than, say, fat on your hips?
It's because they're not just aesthetically different. They are biologically completely different systems. The fat on your hips or under your skin, that's subcutaneous fat. It's relatively passive. It's just cushioning. Visceral fat, though, is anything but passive. It's like an organ unto itself, a really toxic one.
An organ. That completely changes how you think about it.
It should. The sources describe visceral fat as an active, highly inflammatory gland. If you were to look at it under a microscope, it's not just lipid, it's an inflammation factory. It actively produces and secretes these harmful molecules like interleukin-6, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor, or TNF. These aren't just scientific names. These are signals of systemic inflammation.
So if my body is producing all this IL-6 and TNF from my visceral fat, what's that doing to the rest of my system?
It raises your systemic blood inflammation markers like CRPC reactive protein, which is a classic marker we check in labs. Basically, visceral fat puts your whole body into a state of chronic, low-grade inflammatory stress. And that is the root cause of so many chronic diseases.
And there's an even more insidious, kind of invisible cousin to visceral fat, right? The fat we can't even see.
That's ectopic fat. This is inflammatory fat that gets stored outside of the usual fat tissue areas. It accumulates around your vital organs, the liver, the pancreas, and most critically around the coronary arteries. When we talk about arterial plaque, that yellowish stuff that restricts blood flow, a huge component of that inflammation is driven by ectopic fat.
I remember one of the sources mentioning you can actually see this on CT scans, so this is real measurable damage.
Oh, absolutely. We can literally measure the degree of inflammation in the fat that's surrounding the coronary arteries. Ectopic fat is a direct measurable driver of heart disease, and the core problem is still the same. The person with this hyperinsulinemic phenotype struggles to lose this toxic fat because their insulin is always high. It's always screaming store.
Okay, so if insulin is making us store toxic fat, we have to find a way to switch off that storage signal and turn on the mobilization signal, which brings us to the core question in the source material. Is fasting the same thing as just being in a calorie deficit?
No. And this distinction is probably the single most important lesson for anyone's metabolic health. They activate two totally separate physiological processes.
Okay, so let's break those down. What happens when I just, eat less? A calorie deficit.
When you just impose a calorie deficit, your body senses food is restricted, but it doesn't necessarily drop insulin low enough to flip that main metabolic switch. Instead, your body interprets this as famine, so it slows your metabolic rate down to conserve energy. And worse, it often breaks down both fat and muscle tissue. It's just trying to survive what it thinks is long-term starvation, and you don't want to lose that precious muscle.
Definitely not. We want to lose the toxic visceral fat. So how does the body respond differently to actual fasting?
With fasting, the key is the lack of hormonal stimulation. When you stop consuming anything with calories, you stop stimulating the pancreas. Insulin levels they plummet, they flatline, and that dramatic drop is the switch. The body is no longer being told to store. It's being signaled to mobilize. It shifts its entire priority to pulling fat out of the bank to use as fuel.
So when does that switch actually happen? When do I stop running on last night's dinner and start tapping into that fat bank?
There's a pretty clear timeline. In the first 12 hours or so, your body uses up all the easy energy, the glucose in your blood, and the glycogen stored in your liver and muscles. Think of it like draining your checking account. But once that's gone, usually after the 12-hour mark, the mobilization signal really kicks in. You start pulling fat out of storage. And critically, the sources all emphasize that the very first fat the body aggressively targets for fuel is that visceral fat.
That is the key leverage point, that 12-hour threshold. Okay, so once we cross it and the body is mobilizing fat, the liver starts creating a new type of fuel. What is that, and what makes it so special?
That's when your liver converts those mobilized free fatty acids into ketones. This only happens when insulin is low. Low insulin lets the fat travel through the bloodstream to the liver, where it gets repackaged into these amazing energy molecules that can even cross the blood-brain barrier. Your body's now running on a high-octane alternative fuel source.
We hear ketones described as a cleaner fuel. When we're talking about cellular health, what does cleaner actually mean?
It all has to do with the engine of your cell, the mitochondria. When we metabolize glucose, it's a relatively dirty process. It produces a lot of what are called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. Think of ROS like exhaust fumes from your cellular engine. They're damaging free radicals, they accelerate cellular aging.
So glucose metabolism is kind of like a diesel engine pumping out smoke.
That's a perfect analogy. But when ketones are metabolized, the process is way more efficient. It produces significantly less ROS. Ketones are like switching to a high-efficiency electric engine. You get less cellular damage, less exhaust, and your mitochondrial function improves almost immediately.
And the benefits go beyond just energy. The sources detail how ketogenesis is also a major signaling molecule, especially for the brain. I mean, the idea that being hungry makes you smarter seems totally backwards.
It's maybe the most compelling part of our evolution. Ketogenesis triggers a huge increase in brain-derived neurotropic factor, or BDNF. This is essentially fertilizer for your brain. It promotes new cell growth, enhances neural connections, and sharpens your cognitive abilities. We're talking improved visual acuity, faster reflexes, better memory.
Why on earth would nature make us sharper when we're starving?
Survival. Simple as that. If resources are scarce, nature wants the ones still standing to be the best possible specimen to get the next meal. You need to be fast, you need to be focused, and adaptable to hunt or find new resources. It's an evolutionary edge, and it kicks in precisely when you need it most.
Okay, so if ketones are this miracle fuel, why don't we just stay in ketosis all the time?
Because that's not what we were built for. Human physiology was designed for cycling. The natural state is feasting and fasting. You need periods of high insulin to build and restock. That's the feasting part. And you need periods of low insulin to mobilize and repair, the fasting part. If you're constantly in your deposit account, the fat stores, without ever refilling your current account, glucose and glycogen, you disrupt that fundamental balance.
Let's shift from fuel to repair then.
Yeah.
Beyond just burning fat, what are the really advanced cellular benefits the source material points to when we stop eating?
This brings us to a process called autophagy. It's literally Greek for self-eating. It sounds a bit scary, but it's absolutely essential for your health. When a cell senses no new energy or parts are coming in, it starts this massive internal recycling program.
So what does that recycling program look like inside a cell?
Well, the cell identifies all its redundant, worn out, or damaged parts, like old mitochondria, misshapen proteins, you name it. It systematically breaks them down, packages them up, and gets rid of them. It's like a spring cleaning on a microscopic level.
And why is breaking down the old parts better than just waiting for new ones?
Because the result is pure efficiency. You get new functional mitochondria that replace the old sluggish ones. These new mitochondria produce ATP better and, crucially, produce less of that damaging ROS we talked about. It's why people report feeling this incredible surge of energy and clarity after a fast. Their cellular machinery has literally been upgraded.
That's powerful. Beyond recycling, does fasting also trigger the creation of brand new cells for regeneration?
It does. It has a huge positive impact on cell generation and repair, specifically through stem cell mobilization and growth hormone production. The bone marrow produces stem cells, and they're pluripotent, which just means they can turn into whatever is needed. A new muscle cell, a new skin cell, or, very importantly, what are called endothelial progenitor cells.
Progenitor cells, so they're like little construction workers.
They are. The endothelial progenitor cells specifically repair the delicate lining of your blood vessels. And the sources note that the biggest surge of these stem cells happens not during the fast, but right when you break your fast. The body senses new resources are coming in and just floods the system with building blocks to repair everything.
And what about that hormone we associate with youth and muscle?
Growth hormone, GH. While fasting drops insulin, it powerfully increases GH. Intermittent fasting is cited as the fastest and best way to boost your natural production of it, which is key for holding onto your muscle mass even as you're aggressively losing fat.
That brings us perfectly to practical application. So for the listener who wants to start reducing that dangerous visceral fat, what's the progression? What do the sources say?
You have to start gently to adapt the physiology. The starting point for most people is a 12-12 protocol. So 12 hours of non-caloric intake followed by a 12-hour eating window. Do that for 2 or 3 weeks to teach your body to stop grazing.
And once your body gets used to that,
Then you can move to the more effective 186 protocol. An 18-hour fast, a 6-hour eating window. This extended period guarantees you're crossing that 12-hour threshold regularly, so you consistently get that fat mobilization, ketogenesis, and autophagy.
what about for people with more aggressive goals, say someone with diabetes or a lot of weight to lose?
For more serious metabolic conditions, the protocols do escalate, and this should involve professional oversight. We're talking about maybe a 48-hour fast once a week, or cycles of OMAD 1 meal a day, sometimes followed by a 3-day water fast.
And the sources shared some really dramatic case studies, like the 72-day and 183-day fast. We have to be clear, those are extreme medical interventions.
Oh, absolutely. They show what's physiologically possible, but they are not for you to attempt unsupervised. But those cases highlight a really crucial detail: the skin benefit. Unlike rapid calorie restriction, which can leave you with a lot of loose skin, long-term therapeutic fasting uses autophagy to help the skin retract. The recycling is happening on a dermal level.
For those of us sticking to an 186, what are the best aids to get through that fasting window?
Well, non-caloric liquids are your best friend. Water, black coffee, unsweetened tea. But fasting depletes electrolytes, which can cause fatigue and headaches. So the sources strongly recommend supplementing. Simple Celtic salt in water works great, or a quality electrolyte blend. And if you get hit with extreme hunger, a small teaspoon of MCT oil can really suppress that craving while keeping you in a modified fast.
We talked about growth hormone spiking during a fast. So what about exercise timing? When should we work out to get the most benefit?
You want to hit the gym at the peak of the fast. If you're doing on at 86 and your eating window closes at, say, 6 p.m., exercising around 4 or 5 p.m. is perfect. Your growth hormone levels are at their highest. You'll maximize muscle retention and growth potential right in that window.
Now, we do need to address gender differences. The sources mention that the female hypothalamus can be really sensitive to low glucose. Does this mean women should approach fasted exercise differently?
Yes, and the difference is all about the type of exercise. The caution is specifically for long, sustained aerobic activity. So running on a treadmill for 40 minutes while deeply fasted. That kind of prolonged exercise can deplete glucose entirely and signal severe stress to the body.
So the body basically reads that as, I am fleeing from a predator while starving.
Exactly. However, when the focus shifts to resistance training or high-intensity interval training, HIT, the results for women are reported to be fantastic. These activities use quick bursts of energy without that same systemic depletion. They capitalize perfectly on that high growth hormone window. Women should prioritize lifting or HIT.
Okay, finally, we established that constant ketosis isn't the goal. So how should a normal, healthy person cycle these tools?
The ketogenic diet, less than 50 grams of carbs, should be seen as a powerful therapeutic tool. You use it to achieve a specific goal, like losing 70 pounds. Once that goal is met, you transition away from strict carb restriction and maintain your health with time-restricted feeding, like that 186 schedule.
And what about someone who's already metabolically fit? Do they still need to fast?
They do. The sources recommend that even a normal, healthy person should integrate a longer fast into their routine. Aim for at least one 36-hour fast every month. This ensures you're regularly triggering that deep autophagy and cellular repair, just keeping the system running optimally. The synthesis is this. The core problem of modern life is the constant presence of food. For millions of years, the human body never saw a 2147 all-access food bar. We've lost the natural rhythm of feasting and fasting. Our genetics just haven't caught up to this radical lifestyle shift, and it leaves us stuck in storage mode, accumulating toxic fat.
So what does this all mean? It means fasting isn't a diet gimmick. It's not a temporary fix. It is the activation of an ancient, necessary human physiology. It's a survival mechanism designed to aggressively target that toxic visceral fat, dramatically boost your cognitive power through BDNF, and initiate systemic cellular repair through autophagy and growth hormone. Simple calorie restriction just. It can't deliver these sophisticated metabolic benefits. It's a mechanism for upgrading, not just depleting your body. So if fasting and feasting are supposed to be a normal part of human existence, what single small change can you make to your daily or monthly routine right now to reclaim that lost physiology? Maybe just committing to that simple 12-12 protocol starting this evening is the key to unlocking your body's latent healing power. Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.